we have antioxidants like SOD and glutathione, which are going to be part of the body's detoxification pathways. The cell membrane is structured so as to resist electromagnetic attacks. I once had the opportunity to meet Nassim Haramein. We had a wonderful conversation many, many years ago in Hawaii, and he had calculated that the amount of energy that was in the cell, if you were to scale it, was equivalent to the energy found in a black hole, which of course is enormous. It's obviously not on the same scale, but the density of the energy would be proportional. I'm not exactly sure how he calculated that, but that was his opinion. And of course, he's a brilliant physicist. So this is all to say that the human body has mechanisms for dealing with this if we give it what it needs. So that means that we get a healthy diet, we supplement to support our glutathione and other antioxidant levels in the body, we hydrate, we exercise regularly, we get proper sleep, and then we use technology like the patches, which is going to improve the integrity of the cell and support the health of the communication system in the body so it can do what it is intended to do. And I think I would also say that there's other technology coming later this year that will also help people take their results to the next level.
So exciting. So again, then in this aiding of this upgrading process that's happening in a way right now, because of the onslaught, we really have to take matters in our own hands to even just come to like, you know, some zero, some 0 point to maintain where we are until we can get ahead. Whereas this bifurcation I'm seeing, again, those who are ahead, who have been ahead, who've been taking care of their bodies and doing things like X39 and other technologies and things to support are on their way up, and the others are really starting to falter. And so, yes, nutrition, I think mindset is really, really huge. And I want to talk a little bit about that mental, emotional side of things. A lot of the work that I'm doing now is to energetically in the quantum field help remove trapped emotions that are in the energy body and in the body itself, causing dis-ease, and also certainly to the nervous system as life is happening. We are being hit with these things to move through us, but they're getting stuck and trapped against these distortions and causing more disruption and down spiral. And this is all about an up spiral. So again, as we are playing whack-a-mole and trying to come to, you know, get ahead of things, can we talk about the mental emotional part of things, X39, the nervous system, and let's dive into what X39 specifically or other technologies that we have with LifeWave can do to support this getting ahead of this game, or, you know, at least getting started on this trajectory.
Well, you're bringing up a really interesting point, because if we were to look at what are the most powerful ways to heal the body, it would obviously be the spiritual first, because spiritual healing can heal the physical body instantaneously. And that's been represented by gifted healers over the ages. With respect to emotional healing is way more powerful than physical healing. So if you were to look at therapies like the type that you're engaged with and talking about, they're going to have a very pronounced effect on the body as compared to, let's say, someone taking vitamin supplements. And this is where the patches are a very, very interesting tool, because they're straddling that border between the physical and the spiritual, because they are stimulating the body with light. So if we were to look at what is actually happening physically in the cell so that we can understand why emotional healing is so powerful, it's because exactly what you said, the effects on the nervous system. So when people live in a state of anger, and that's what I think the news is kind of meant to do, is provoke states of anger and frustration, right? So it can be very dangerous to watch it. You have to get enough in to know what's going on in the world, but not too much that it makes you angry. We know from clinical studies that that state of anger causes tremendous stress on the autonomic nervous system, leads to increases in cortisol, problems with the endocrine system, problems with the adrenals, and ultimately increases in oxidative and inflammatory stress, which age the body quickly. So the formula is, if you live in a state of anger, your body is going to age more quickly, and you're never going to attain any type of spiritual awareness. On the other hand, sometime I like to say that I think Jesus was the first anti-aging scientist or age reversal scientist, by telling people to love one another. But in Judeo-Christian beliefs, in Buddhism, I won't speak to other religions because I don't know enough about them. I don't study them. But the idea that we should love one another is not only great for society, but when we live in a state of love, it actually reverses the age of the body. This is proven now. There have been studies which look at muscle fiber. And if a person has elevated levels of oxytocin, the hormone that is associated with love, it will actually reverse the age of muscle tissue. It doesn't matter if people are 70 or 80 years old, that muscle tissue will begin to look more like someone in their 20s. So the good news is, anyone listening that's in their 60s, 70s, 80s, it's not too late. If you start to live in a state of love, your body will change, and remarkably fast.
Mhm. Yeah. Fascinating. I love that. And I also understand, anger, of course, being on that lower spectrum, just we're either in love or we're in some state of fear. And it's really a spectrum. It's how much distortion and clouds are in between you and that source connection of love, which is purely what we are. Our soul is love. And also this Christ consciousness and unity consciousness. This is really this part of this ascension. And that is the direction to move. And we can't heal when we are in the lower levels. If we're in fear, we're in fight or flight, the body can't heal. We have to be in that love. And when you think about how incredible people feel when they fall in love and they're in that period where there is no past or future, they're focused totally in the present, there's no distortion, they have energy for days, and they're healing and they look younger and everything. It's like instant, right? If we can cultivate that within, remove the things that are not real, that are not true, that's such a part of healing as well. So in terms of X39 and what it can do for the nervous system and in this elevation, can we talk about that in terms of the frequency, what
Yep.
it does for the nervous system?
Yeah, so actually, I would talk about both X39 and Eon
Yeah, I
because
thought
they're such a great pair for one another. So Eon, of course, we released that. I started work on that back in 2010, and it is designed to elevate a peptide that's produced in the liver, and it will trigger a response in what's known as the primitive immune system. So we get increases in glutathione, increases in SOD, and a basic relaxation response in the autonomic nervous system. Although, if someone is in a state of relaxation, it'll move us more to a state of balance. Most people, though, are in a sympathetic drive and they can't calm down. So Eon is going to help them get more into a state of balance. And it's in that state of balance, really, where we find the best immune function. If ironically, if our bodies are too relaxed, our immune system can struggle. So the advantage to this is that getting our nervous system into a state of balance reduces inflammatory stress, and it will ultimately end up reducing pain and improving quality of life. Where X39 comes in is that it stimulates the skin with light, increases copper peptide levels, and in so doing, GHKCU, copper peptide, will reset thousands of genes to a more youthful state. So it is one of the best natural weapons that we have to combat what's going on in the world today.
Mhm.
is if we keep our genes in a youthful state, then our immune system is working, our mitochondria is working, our protein synthesis is working, and we can handle the stressors around us.
Fantastic. Do you think that that would aid in this elevation of consciousness in general in terms of its effect on our awareness, perspective? Because what I've really noticed and what I tend to teach in this shift with the autonomic nervous system coming into more balance, the coherence in the brain, I would love for you to talk about that. Uh, Heart rate variability, maybe even that brain heart coherence. All of these to me seem to feed into a new perspective, almost like a consciousness shift, an awareness shift that can help us along this journey and seeing the world with kinder eyes, with more love, and moving into that direction. Can you speak to that?
I think there is a number of very interesting connections there. First, I think the fact that the patches do what they do when they're introduced to people, they have to stop and think for a minute and say, well, if this relieved my pain, how did that actually do that? And really, light is doing this. So it gives them an opportunity to awaken to this idea that the body is much more than just a chemical factory. There's a lot more going on. So I think would be one important thing. Another thing is that we know from thousands of years of Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine that the emotions are strongly correlated and associated with organs in the body. So for example, we know when we're talking about anger, we know that that's strongly correlated to the liver. When people live in fear, that's strongly correlated with the lungs. So if we can improve the health of those organs, now we can live a more peaceful life, and we don't have to live in fear. But the other thing, when we talk about spiritual ascension, that's a really interesting thing because when we think about how do people achieve a more balanced spiritual life, well, you go into prayer, you go into meditation, and you're doing that in a state of relaxation. So having a tool like the patches that can help facilitate relaxation of the nervous system is going to aid in those practices. You still have to do the work
Yes.
and you still have to set aside time for that. But the patches are a great tool to assist people on that journey.
Mhm. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm also curious about, so I understand that the patches, the energy patches, of course, but certainly X39 as well, deliver this light and this energy to the mitochondria as well. I personally feel, and many people, especially spiritual people, when I patch them, um, they feel it and they feel a boost. It's almost like an upgrade. Um, and to me that signifies it's like when I patch somebody, I say within 24 to 48 hours you're jumping a level. Would you, and I know you don't have probably science to that, is that something measurable? Is that something that you witnessed or that you would concur with?
Yeah, I think I would say with all of our products, well, we certainly see improvements in the way the body generates energy, the flow of energy through the body, and that's going to manifest itself in many, many different ways. Many years ago, there was a fellow that I was working with, and he had been in a terrible accident, and he had a cast around his leg. So we began to work with the patches and also with a pulsed electromagnetic field therapy device that I had invented. And as the pain, he described it as being, as a 15 out of 10 on the pain scale. So uh, as he got the treatment and the pain started to come down, he experienced a type of euphoria. That's the only way I could describe it, that he was finally getting relief. And then at one point, the cast fell off of his leg. And because the swelling had come down so much, and he was able to walk without any kind of pain. So sometimes, every once in a while, this has happened quite a few times over the years, where you have these, it's like, spirit will intervene and you witness a miracle and you see this divine healing. and it manifests itself in people going into, I think, yeah, I'd say maybe like a state of euphoria.
Mhm.
It can start with the physical, but then it transitions into the spiritual.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm curious too when it comes to some people, and it seems like again, a lot of my kind of my peeps are in this realm more and more, and so I'm attracting more people that are in the healing arts and that are like on this path to incorporate X39 and certainly the other patches afterwards and the new things that are coming. So excited. And so what we're finding is we're patching some people and they're finding it's almost too much energy. Their body just takes it in, and it's like they get this feeling like, woo, it's like a lot. And so we're having them titrate their way, where it'll just a little slower to get to. Is that because they don't have, like, they don't need to come into balance? They're actually moving straight past the balance and into that next level. What do you think?
Yeah. So sometimes this is where the patches are applied. And interestingly, what we found is that when people have that effect, it's almost always they have the patches somewhere on the upper torso. And if they move the patches to the lower torso, that it's not quite as stimulating. So, for example, they could put the energy or the ice wave patches on the bottom of the feet
Mhm.
that would correlate to the kidneys, and that has a relatively calming effect on the body. Placing patches on the upper torso can stimulate flow in the energy through what we call the pericardium channel or the triple burner channel. And this is like activating the internal fire. And then, yeah, you start to get all this energy that flows.
Got it. Got it. And X39 can do that as well on the body.
X39 does it a little bit differently, but it is certainly very, very powerful when it comes to stimulating the body and the reactions that we see. So certainly when we've done our studies, one of the common feedbacks is, yeah, I noticed the first day that I had more energy.
Great. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about genes, genetics, DNA repair. I'll keep you not too much longer, but this is juicy. So explaining how X39 facilitates this re-regulating, right? This, our genetics are getting all wonky and dysregulated, right? From our food, our air, our water, toxic thinking, all of the things. So we have some that are down-regulating, some that are up-regulating, and they're expressing in dis-ease in many areas. And so with that preface, we have this rewrite that's happening when we apply this patch very quickly, that's re-regulating, correct? Can you speak to that
So
just a bit and how that works with our DNA?
yeah. So there's probably two mechanisms here that are worth discussing. The first one, before we get to X39, let's talk about glutathione. Because when you use X39, it will elevate glutathione levels in the body. That's part of the beauty of it. Um, so let's take, for example, studies that have been done with UV light. And so we know UV light can cause breaks in the DNA, and this can lead to mutations and it can lead to cancer, right? So how do we protect ourselves from that? Well, what's been found, not surprisingly, is that when the glutathione levels in the body's master antioxidant, when they go low, it gives things like UV light an opportunity to damage the DNA. But if we keep our glutathione levels elevated, let's say someone goes out in the sun, they get too much UV light, but they have elevated levels of glutathione, the glutathione will repair the DNA before the cell divides, and that prevents a mutation from occurring. So our bodies, again, very in a very elegant fashion, already have some simple and sophisticated measures for protecting ourselves from mutations or damage to the DNA. And glutathione is one way to do it. So that means people should eat their broccoli. They should have sulfur-containing foods, take an NAC supplement, and of course they can use things like the glutathione patch or X39. Now, where X39 comes in, that's different than glutathione, is the power of copper and copper peptide. So back maybe starting around the 1950s, The FDA was recommending people take 3 milligrams of copper daily, and progressively over the time, that's been reduced to 900 micrograms, so less than 1 milligram. And people can get 30 milligrams of copper just by having a serving of liver. And most people aren't going to have that every day. But if they have things like chocolate and wheatgrass, they could get a few milligrams of copper. So the reason to bring this up is that we need copper to make the mitochondria produce energy, and we need copper to help regulate the genes in the body. So you get this very simple peptide called GHKCU. It's made of the amino acids glycine, histidine, and lysine. And we have plenty of it when we're in our 20s. And then by the age of 60, our levels of copper peptide have come down 60 to 80%. And copper peptide is going to be responsible for keeping about 1/3 of the human genome in a youthful state. And part of that is going to regulate stem cell activity, amongst other things, wound healing, the function of the immune system, inflammation, quality of our skin. It covers a very broad spectrum of
Nervous
health
system as well,
benefits.
right? That's where the nervous system also comes in. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we could think for a moment, if we had a product that could keep 100% of our genes at age 25, we'd all be pretty happy. For right now, it's 1/3 of the genome, and
Mhm.
our work is to get that other 2/3. That's what we look for. But the important thing about this is by doing very simple things, and they're both simple tripeptides, by keeping our glutathione levels elevated, by keeping our copper peptide levels elevated, we can help to protect our DNA from chemical attacks, from energetic attacks, things like 5G and Bluetooth, and we can help to maintain the integrity of the cell, help our immune function, and keep our body healthy and strong. And that's really important message.
That's amazing. So it does help in those assaults, those energetic assaults from our environment, the X39.
I would say because the mechanism, well, there's two interesting mechanisms. One itself is copper.
Mhm.
Uh, we
Right.
didn't get to finish this work because of the pandemic, but when people take copper supplements or they get an increase in copper in the skin, it acts as a shield or a barrier to electromagnetic energy. So people with elevated levels of copper won't be as subject to some of the damaging effects of the sun, to 5G, Bluetooth, and so forth.
That's amazing. It's like our own Faraday cage, our skin, right?
It is. It is. I actually had spoke with a scientist years ago in Sweden who is an expert in this, and I had said I have this hypothesis about how to form a biological Faraday cage,
Yeah,
and he said,
see?
"Oh, I've never heard of anything like this before," but that's exactly what it is.
That's so cool. I love that. I wear certain little things that have like tourmaline and different
Mhm.
things, charge them in the sun and put them on just to give my, and I've muscle tested to see if my biofield is stronger, or if I'm stronger. And it's really, there are fascinating technologies out there these days. But I'm not as crazy about some of the actual electrical technologies. And there's something different about the frequencies that are coming off the patches that seem to hit differently than those electronic devices. I don't know where this is. I think we talked about this in the last episode, so I won't go into it right now, but that's also really interesting how gentle that these are, and that they really are, they're just so unique, and thankfully heavily patented as well. So, all right. So, all right, so let me just check my last couple of questions here. I know that these denser energies, I'd spoken a little bit before about distortions, the torsion fields of negative thinking and different assaults that we have create distortions in the body that then eventually burrow their ways, the way I say, turn into matter, create dis-ease. As working with these to clear these, do you feel that the energy of the patches and the change in the frequency at the mitochondria and the cascade of that can help to loosen or lessen some of these denser energies in the body to help us on this process of holding more light in and getting rid of the distortion from the body?
I would say if we looked at it from the perspective that the body's always going to function better in a state of homeostasis, in a state of balance, and anything that we can do to keep our bodies in a state of balance is going to facilitate the proper flow of energy through the body. So I'd probably look at it that way. And then, of course, what we're looking at is how can we best maintain the health of the metabolism of the cell. And again, that comes right back to the mitochondria. So all of that is measurable. So yeah, I would agree with it from that
From that
perspective.
perspective, yeah, great.
Yeah.
And so the mitochondria, and this is this affecting all the cells in the body or just the stem cells? Which is really, the vast majority of things are, but what about those specialized cells in the body? Are they also getting that boost of mitochondria at the mitochondria?
Well, I would say there are energy carriers in the body. There are cells that don't make energy, and that has to be supplied from an external source. And that's where ATP comes in handy because it's going to act like that, gasoline or fuel for the cell.
Got it. Got it. Okay, last couple things here. I want to talk about heart-brain coherence, the heart rate variability. Is there a connection with the brain and the heart that you feel is part of what this conversation in terms of, what we're doing with LifeWave? And certainly, again, in terms of the coherence, we did already speak a bit about the nervous system, but the heart, I want to really bring it into that conversation.
Yeah. Well, we have on one level, many of the early studies that we did with LifeWave were on heart rate variability. And those studies were done at the University of Texas in El Paso with Dr. Homer Nazaran. And so heart rate variability, of course, is looking at the ratio, high frequency, low frequency muscle contractions in the four chambers of the heart. And obviously, we would like to see everything be in balance. And HRV can tell us a lot more about what's going on in the body than just simply with the heart. It can be a predictor of many things. So it was found that when tools like the energy patches were placed on the wrist at the pericardium points, that it could improve the heart rate variability and cause a relaxation response in the nervous system. Later, the type of things that we started to look at was having Eon improve heart rate variability, and then even having patch applications around the head. We used to have this thing that we taught called a pyramid protocol, whereas if you looked at the head as being the Great Pyramid, you could apply patches at the base and then right at the crown, that would be the tip. And we did a study, it was at University of Tennessee, and we found that people could get into a meditative state much more easily by applying the Eon patch and the energy patches around the head in this protocol. So there was something to that. So yeah, I would say we've definitely found ways over the years to use the patches to improve both the heart and the health of the brain and the way people meditate.
Yeah, and that connection, I think that's so important. Okay, and I think what I'd like to maybe wrap with, although I could keep you forever, I don't want to do that. So, this last question, speaking about our life force energy, our Kundalini, and again, in the spiritual conversation, there's a lot of talk around the rising of the Kundalini. People are having different traumas that happen in their life that are sparking, Kundalini awakening, if you will, or like almost like a forcing of this energy through the chakra system. And it's hitting the distortions and the different things in the body that are creating a lot of havoc for some people, and others are having just this electrical current they're feeling going up and down the spine and through the chakras. So my question with this going through the nervous system and out through the whole nervous system, this is an upgrade. This is it's part of awakening. And so looking again at LifeWave and at the patches and X39 in terms of this process, do you see a correlation in the improvement of the ability to move this energy, since you've been working in the meridian systems and all this movement of energy through the body? Is there a correlation there, or something that we can just grab hold of to help us through that process when people are challenged with that?
That's an interesting question. Years ago, I met a medical doctor in Taiwan, Dr. Anna Tao, and what she was regularly doing was applying patches along the spine. And she would put a white energy patch at the back of the neck and then a tan patch at the base of the spine. And she was principally doing this to help her patients get pain relief. And she would see that this would cause a relaxation in the spine. The spine would release, and people would get pain relief from it. But of course, in a number of different practices, that would be the first step
Mhm.
to having an experience like a Kundalini rising. Um, I've had that happen to me when I've gone into meditation,
Mhm.
and as you know, it does require some work
Mhm.
because everything kind of has to be just right. And it is really an extraordinary experience. So, whether or not we certainly haven't done any clinical studies to see how we might use the patches this way, but I suppose I would say that there's some evidence there that we could use it that way. It'd be something very interesting to explore.
Yes, I don't think it's good to awaken Kundalini forcefully. I'm definitely not a
Right.
proponent of that, but certainly to relieve when it has kind of let loose. I have likewise, especially more recently, I wake up in the middle of the night and I just feel electric currents going all over the place, but they're not painful for me. Thankfully, they're actually quite nice, but it's very interesting. And I'm always just like, a little wink up and going, thank you. I get it. We're on the
Yeah,
right path.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating. It's so cool. So I guess in wrapping, what I'd love to just say is, indeed, on this journey, as our bodies are in this phase shift, in this awakening process, this ascension process, the frequencies rising, we are finding that distortions are coming up that we need to clear and work with. Sometimes they're painful, sometimes they're more euphoric. And that these patches really can help to facilitate in this process, whether it's to bring relief, to bring more balance, or even to help to facilitate and jumpstart, or keep us moving on that path. And that's what I just love about it. And I love to bring this conversation to this community. And of course, if you're watching this, Sweet Spot Power, that's what I'm all about. So I'm always looking for hacks and different ways to help to support these processes. And also, and of course, if you found this from somebody else and they sent you this, please get back with them and make sure you speak with them and learn more about these technologies, and also take a look into how this might be able to support any practices you're doing if you are in the healing arts, or really in any of these modalities, or just an everyday person. Quite frankly, we're all part of this together. So we have a conversation about that as well, because we do this from home, and we just love that the happy customers are the ones who put this out there to everyone else. And so I really love this conversation. David, do you have any last thoughts about this in this realm? Again, we've got a whole other conversation that we did that I'm going to link in the description below, all about the science, and it's a whole different, it's a left brain conversation. This right brain conversation, again, being more on the metaphysical side. Any last thoughts with that sort of wrap up, or anything that's come to you?
Oh, I think what I would say is, people today, we're faced with an enormous number of challenges in the world around us, but there's always hope. And if we turn our attention to God, if we live a life of prayer, if we live a life of love, we can find ways to protect ourselves and protect our families, our loved ones, against some of the things that are going on in the world. And it is a responsibility we have today to speak up against some of the darkness in the world, and foster the light within us and in the world around us, so we can live on a planet and be at peace the way that God intended.
Absolutely. Yeah, amen. And given that we're headed towards this unity consciousness, this Christ consciousness, this true state of being, of love, and really seeing that we all are interconnected, if we can see this from a higher perspective and recognize that everything that's coming up right now in the world and within us as well is really just distortion coming up to be cleared. We're moving into higher and higher frequencies all around. This is a beautiful thing, but we have to move through this phase shift collectively as well. And so to have grace with yourself, grace with what's happening, and understand we're in God's hands and it's all somehow in the end for the greater good of all, but to really be a part of your part of anchoring yourself into the highest frequencies yourself, the highest ways of caring for yourself and loving people around you and loving yourself as well. And then collectively we'll make it through this together. So thank you so much for being here
Absolutely.
today. Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
So great. So great. Thank you again. And let me go ahead and turn off the recording.